James Woods spent 50 years building one of the most respected careers in Hollywood. Then he picked up Twitter and lost almost all of it. The age gaps in his relationships started making more noise than his films. A 19-year-old when he was 60. A 20-year-old when he was 66. Then an accusation surfaced about a girl who was only 16. Co-stars started speaking out. Studios started backing away. By 2018, the same man Scorsese, once cast in Casino, couldn't even keep his own agent. What really happened in those years? And why did so many people stop defending him? James Howard Woods was born on April 18, 1947, in Vernal, Utah, a tiny oil town with fewer than 5,000 people. It was far from Hollywood, far from glamour, and far from the kind of life he would later become known for. His father, Gale Peyton Woods, worked as a U.S. Army intelligence officer, and for a while James grew up in a home shaped by discipline, pressure, and high expectations. Then everything changed in 1960, when his father died after what was described as routine surgery. James was only 13. That loss stayed with him. Many later accounts connect it to the hard edge people would see in him for decades, both on screen and off. After Utah, he grew up in Warwick, Rhode Island, where his mother remarried, and he took the surname of his stepfather, Thomas E. Dixon. By the time he reached Pilgrim High School, he had already become known as the kind of student people noticed right away. He graduated in 1965, near the top of his class, and stood out in debate as much as in academics. Stories about him from those years often circle back to the same idea. He was brilliant, sharp, intimidating, and fully aware of it. Reports later described him as having a near genius-level IQ, and Woods himself would repeat that point often in interviews, especially when arguing with critics. Even before acting entered the picture, he had built a reputation as someone who liked winning and liked letting people know he could. That made his next step even more unusual. In the mid-1960s, Woods enrolled at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the most demanding schools in the country, to study political science. Around 1965, at just 18 years old, he stepped into MIT while the United States was deep in the Vietnam era, with campus unrest and political tension rising everywhere. For someone who would later become famous playing unstable killers, damaged men, and dangerous outsiders, MIT was a surprising stop. Yet it fit him in a strange way. He had the mind for it, the ambition for it, and later he would use those years almost like proof of rank whenever public arguments turned heated. The phrase, "I went to MIT," became part of how he presented himself. Still, the path that looked certain did not hold him for long. By 1969, just short of graduating, Woods had become deeply involved with the MIT student theater group Drama Shop. That changed everything. Through theater, he connected to Boston's Theater Company of Boston, where the stage manager was Tim Affleck, the father of Ben and Casey Affleck. Woods later said he owed his career to Tim Affleck, who pushed him to take acting seriously. That was the turning point. At 22, Woods walked away from the safety of an elite degree and stepped into low-paying stage work with no guarantee that it would lead anywhere. It was a risky choice, but it gave him something he clearly wanted more than security. It gave him a stage, and once he got on stage, he moved fast. Before Broadway ever called, Woods had already appeared in around 36 stage productions, which is an astonishing number for someone still in his early 20s. Then, in 1970, he reached Broadway at the Lyceum Theater in the first U.S. production of Frank McMahon's prison reform drama, Borstal Boy. The story attached to that breakthrough became part of his legend. He reportedly got the role by faking a British accent at the audition. Soon after came The Trial of the Catonsville Nine in 1971, followed by Moonchildren, which moved to Broadway in 1972. That performance earned him a Theatre World Award in 1972, and by then, he was no longer just a talented newcomer. He was a serious stage actor with momentum. From there, film and television began to widen the frame. One of his first major screen turns came in The Visitors, released in December 1972. Directed by Elia Kazan, the film drew from the horror surrounding the My Lai massacre, and Woods played Bill, a tense former soldier carrying deep damage. It gave audiences a first real look at what he could do with menace. Yet the role that truly made him unavoidable arrived years later, in April 1978, when NBC aired the 8-hour miniseries Holocaust over 4 nights. Woods played SS officer Carl Weiss, opposite Meryl Streep, and his performance was chilling. Viewers who were used to safer television drama suddenly saw a face that could project cruelty with disturbing calm. The series reached around 120 million viewers worldwide, and after that, Woods stopped being a promising actor on the rise. He became someone people remembered. That shift became even more intense in 1979 with The Onion Field, released in March of that year. The film told the real story of the 1963 kidnapping and murder of LAPD officer Ian Campbell, and Woods played Gregory Powell, the manipulative criminal at the center of it. What made the performance land so hard was not volume or showiness, it was control. He made Powell frightening through talk, through mood, through the sense that danger could surface at any second. Critics noticed immediately. He earned Best Actor nominations from the Golden Globes, the National Society of Film Critics, and the New York Film Critics Circle. At that point, the industry no longer saw him as just a skilled character actor. He had become one of the most dangerous leading men of his era. He kept pushing in that direction. In 1983, David Cronenberg cast him as Max Wren in Videodrome, a film that would grow into a cult classic even though initial reactions were split. Woods played the president of a sleazy cable channel who becomes obsessed with a pirate broadcast showing torture and murder. The movie was shot in Toronto on a budget of about $5.9 million, and Woods had to work through practical body horror effects that were physically demanding and deeply strange. Long days under prosthetics, scenes built around hallucinations that did not yet exist on screen, and a character sliding further into paranoia all gave him room to do something wild. The result was a twitchy, nervous, deeply unsettling performance that later became a model for techno-horror anti-heroes. Then came Once Upon a Time in America in 1984, Sergio Leone's long and haunting gangster epic. In the full European version, the film ran about 229 minutes, nearly 4 hours, and Woods played Max Berkovich opposite Robert De Niro's Noodles. Their characters begin as Jewish street kids and grow into crime figures shaped by ambition, memory, and betrayal. Woods gave Max charm at first, then gradually let that charm turn darker. By the time the betrayal fully lands, the damage feels personal. The US release was heavily cut to around 139 minutes, which confused many viewers and weakened the story's impact at the time. But the full version slowly gained the reputation it deserved. As that happened, Woods' performance rose with it. De Niro later praised the unpredictability Woods brought to the role, and that unpredictability became one of his signatures. By the middle of the 1980s, his screen image had become very clear. If a role was nervous, ugly, morally stained, or emotionally unstable, Woods could give it force. In Cat's Eye, released in April 1985, he played Dick Morrison, a smoker trapped in a brutal quitting program that terrorizes him and threatens his wife. Then in Bestseller in 1987, he played Cleve, a contract killer trying to force a former cop-turned-writer to publish his crimes. Neither film became a massive cultural event, but together they strengthened his identity in Hollywood. He was the face studios turned to when they needed danger with intelligence behind it. That same force reached a new level with Salvador in 1986. Released on January 23rd, the film cast Woods as real-life photojournalist Richard Boyle in Oliver Stone's story about El Salvador during its bloody civil war. More than 70,000 people were killed in that conflict between 1979 and 1992, and the film carries that chaos in every frame. Much of it was shot in Mexico, often in real slums and military zones, with security kept tight because of fears of kidnapping. The budget stayed under $5 million, but Woods gave a performance far bigger than the film's scale. He moved through the role with speed, fear, selfishness, confusion, and flashes of conscience, making Boyle feel like a man trying to outrun the truth until the truth corners him. That performance earned Woods his first Oscar nomination for Best Actor at the 59th Academy Awards in 1987. Many people still see Salvador as one of the most overlooked films of his career. It received only 2 Oscar nominations, Woods for Best Actor and Stone and Boyle for Original Screenplay, and it won neither. The movie also struggled commercially when it first came out. Even so, critics and fans kept returning to it, and over time, it built the kind of reputation that never depends on box office numbers. People still talk about the way Woods can shift inside a single scene, moving from hustler to witness, from opportunist to a man who finally understands the horror around him. That is one reason the film remains central to discussions of his best work. The 1990s brought more major roles and more proof that he could dominate a film even with limited screen time. In Casino, released on November 22, 1995, Martin Scorsese cast him as Lester Diamond, the fast-talking ex-pimp who keeps draining Sharon Stone's ginger for money. He is not in the film for very long, maybe 10 to 15 minutes in a movie that runs around 3 hours. But every moment counts. Lester feels slippery, needy, pathetic, and dangerous all at once. Woods made him impossible to ignore. Many viewers still see Lester Diamond as one of the most memorable small roles in a major crime film of that decade. A year later, in December 1996, he played Byron de la Beckwith in Ghosts of Mississippi. Beckwith was the white supremacist who murdered civil rights leader Medgar Evers on June 12, 1963, in Jackson, Mississippi. Evers was shot in his driveway in front of his family. 2 trials in the 1960s ended with hung juries, and Beckwith remained free for more than 30 years before his 1994 retrial finally led to conviction. Woods played him under heavy age makeup, and the performance was cold, poisonous, and deeply disturbing. It earned Woods an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor in 1997, and showed once again how powerful he could be when playing men audiences were meant to hate. Television also gave him major victories during this period. In Promise, a 1986 Hallmark Hall of Fame film, Woods played DJ, a man who gives up his own plans to care for his brother, who lives with schizophrenia. The role brought him his first Primetime Emmy, which he won in 1987 for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Limited Series or Movie. Then, on September 17, 1989, he won that same category again for My Name is Bill W., where he played Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill Wilson, tracing Wilson's struggles after the 1929 stock market crash and his path through addiction. 2 Emmy wins in 3 cycles confirmed something the industry had already started to understand. Woods was not just effective in film. He could carry intense dramatic television with the same force. Years later, his image took a strange new turn through animation. Family Guy turned James Woods into one of its wildest recurring celebrity villains. He first appeared in the 2005 episode Peter's Got Woods, where the show introduced him through a parody that had him lured by a trail of Reese's Pieces, making him look greedy, childish, and ridiculous. Over 8 appearances between 2005 and 2016, the cartoon version of Woods kept escalating. He stole Peter Griffin's identity, had Quahog High named after him, and later stripped of that honor, died in a murder mystery episode, then returned anyway, as if death were only a pause. The writers shaped him into a petty, revenge-driven maniac, someone so obsessed with himself that he would destroy other people's work purely out of spite. Later episodes even blurred the line between parody and real life by having characters mock him as a political troll and a maniac on Twitter. By the time his appearances stopped after season 15, the cartoon version of James Woods had become almost as famous as some of his real performances. Outside acting, public attention increasingly shifted toward his personal life, especially his relationships. Over time, a clear pattern emerged. Woods was repeatedly linked to women much younger than him, and the size of those age gaps kept drawing criticism. Around 2006, when he was about 59, he reportedly began dating Ashley Madison, who was 19. That relationship lasted about 7 years and ended in April 2013. The 40-year gap became part of the story every time the relationship was mentioned, and media coverage often framed it in the most blunt way possible by placing their ages side by side in headlines. By then, this was no longer a quiet detail in his private life. It had become part of his public image. That conversation grew louder in 2013 when, not long after reports of that breakup, Woods appeared publicly with Kristen Bogus, who was 20 while he was 66. They made their red carpet debut at the June 2013 premiere of White House Down, and once again the age gap became the headline. This time it was 46 years. Reactions online were quick and harsh, especially because people now saw a repeated pattern rather than an isolated relationship. The criticism sharpened in September 2017 after Woods attacked the film Call Me By Your Name on Twitter over its depiction of a relationship between a 17-year-old and an older man. Actor Armie Hammer responded by pointing directly at Woods' own dating history, posting, "Didn't you date a 19-year-old when you were 60?" That reply spread widely, pulled older headlines back into circulation, and turned the moment into a public argument about hypocrisy. Suddenly, Woods was not just being criticized for his relationships. He was being challenged for judging others while carrying his own record. Soon after, actress Amber Tamblyn added a far more serious accusation. She said Woods had tried to pick her up when she was 16, and he was around 52. According to Tamblyn, he invited her and a friend to Las Vegas, and when she told him her age, she says he replied, "Even better." She later expanded on the allegation in an open letter published in Teen Vogue in September 2017, describing the behavior as predatory and accusing him of trying to deny and distort the incident afterward. That added a darker and more disturbing layer to the public conversation already surrounding him. Even after years of scrutiny, the pattern did not seem to change. By 2016, Woods was publicly linked to Sarah Miller, often also reported as Sarah Miller, and by 2017, the relationship had become visible on Instagram. Reports later stated that when Woods was 77, Miller was 35, creating another large age gap of about 42 years. Coverage of their relationship kept returning to that number, and even when Woods posted happy captions about being the luckiest guy, the public discussion stayed focused on the difference in age. James Woods did not drift into political combat by accident. He used Twitter to turn himself from a respected actor into a constant fighter in the culture wars, and the shift happened in public, one post at a time. What made it stand out was not only what he said, but when he said it, who he aimed at, and how often he chose the most loaded moment possible. Again and again, he found the flashpoint, stepped into it, and pushed harder. That pattern was clear on Easter Sunday, 1st April 2018. Woods saw that Google's homepage had no Easter doodle and joined an outrage cycle already spreading through conservative Twitter. After retweeting InfoWars editor Paul Joseph Watson, he added his own line, "They loathe Christians, plain and simple." The claim hit fast because it framed a missing holiday graphic as proof of anti-Christian hostility from one of the biggest tech companies in the world. The problem was that Google had followed the same public rule for years. Its doodle guidelines had long excluded religious holidays of every kind, and the company had not run an Easter doodle since 2000. Even so, Woods presented an old policy as a fresh insult, and for his followers that was enough to make it feel like another front in a bigger cultural fight. A few months earlier, on 18th of October 2017, he had done something similar in a more personal way. The country was already focused on President Trump's condolence call to the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. Democratic Congresswoman Frederica Wilson had criticized the president's tone and said he told the grieving widow that her husband knew what he signed up for. Woods answered by posting a photo of Wilson, known for her colorful cowboy hats, and attached the tag, "Brock's Parasite Rodeo Clown." With one tweet, he shifted attention away from what she said and turned her appearance into the target. Critics saw the post as racist and misogynistic, and they argued that he was turning a black congresswoman into a joke for a huge online audience rather than engaging with the issue she had raised. That same instinct showed up again on 21st February 2018, the day Donald Trump hosted a televised listening session at the White House with survivors and families from the Parkland school shooting. 17 people had been murdered, and the country was watching young survivors speak through shock and grief. Woods chose that day to call for force. Addressing Trump directly, he asked when the president would have a Department of Justice with teeth, then listed voter fraud, sanctuary cities, illegal immigration, the opioid crisis, gang murders, and drug cartels as threats that were rotting the soul of our blessed America. He closed with a dramatic command. "Unleash the dogs of war, sir. It is time." What stood out was what he left unsaid. He had plenty to say about enemies, punishment, and national decline, yet school shootings and gun violence were missing even while Parkland families were inside the White House. By then, Woods had already shown how easily he could take an ordinary image and turn it into a warning. On 13th of November 2017, he posted a short video from Nickelodeon Universe inside Minnesota's Mall of America. The clip showed Muslim families and children enjoying the rides. Woods treated the scene as a threat and wrote, "I would suggest getting your Christmas shopping done early." Oh, wait! The message was clear. He was telling his audience to see these families not as shoppers, parents, or kids at an amusement park, but as a sign that something had been taken over. The tweet spread quickly, collecting thousands of likes and retweets, and the Minneapolis Star-Tribune editorial board answered with a rare direct rebuke, arguing that the real problem was not the people in the video, but the hate Woods was encouraging. As his online persona grew harsher, another controversy pulled people back toward his own conduct. On 10th September 2017, Woods attacked the film Call Me by Your Name on Twitter. He condemned its romance between a 24-year-old man and a 17-year-old boy, called it something that chips away the last barriers of decency, and tagged it NAMBLA. He framed the story as proof of cultural decay, and that might have been the end of it if people had not started looking at him instead. The film became one subject of debate, but Woods himself quickly became the bigger one. Armie Hammer made sure of that. Then 31, Hammer replied directly and asked, "Didn't you date a 19-year-old when you were 60?" The line landed because it was specific. It pointed people toward Woods' real-life relationships with much younger women, including Ashley Madison when she was 19 and he was 60, and Kristen Bogus when she was 20 and he was 66. Once that history was pulled into view, the argument around the movie changed shape. The focus shifted from a fictional age gap on screen to the much larger gaps in Woods' own dating life, and screenshots of those relationships moved across social media at speed. Then Amber Tamblyn added a story that made the backlash even more serious. In 2017, when she was 34, she wrote that Woods had approached her and a friend at Mel's Diner on Sunset Boulevard when she was 16, and he was around 52. According to Tamblyn, he invited them to Las Vegas that same night. She later wrote that she had clearly told him her age. His answer, she said, was "even better," followed by the promise that it would be "so much fun." That account changed the mood completely. It did not read like internet sparring. It read like a memory she had carried for years. Woods denied it and called her story a lie. Tamblyn did not step back. Instead, she pushed forward and described him as a silencer, saying his denial pulled her back into the familiar pattern of women being doubted when they speak about powerful men. She expanded on that experience in an open letter for Teen Vogue, and later in a New York Times op-ed published on 16 September 2017, explaining how Woods' response reopened memories of earlier harassment and the long habit of not being believed. That was the point where his name stopped appearing only in political feuds and started settling into a darker conversation about predatory behavior and public dismissal. A few weeks later, one image helped seal that shift. On 12 November 2017, actress Elizabeth Perkins attended the Take Back the Workplace and Your Me Too Survivors March in Hollywood, carrying a white sign that said only, "James Woods, Me Too." There was no long explanation on the sign, and that was part of why it struck so hard. Those 3 words spread online and worked almost like a verdict in public culture. No charges followed, yet the combination of Tamblyn's account, Woods' denial, and Perkins's sign helped turn his name into a symbol inside the wider "China Never Me Too" moment. Even while that damage was building, Woods was also fighting another battle tied to Twitter, this time in court. On 29 July 2015, he filed a $10 million defamation lawsuit in Los Angeles County Superior Court against an anonymous user called Ableist, who posted under the handle Ableisted. The case centered on a 15 July 2015 tweet that called him a cocaine addict. Woods argued that the post was part of a malicious campaign that had been running since late 2014 and said it damaged his reputation, career, and earning power. For a man who spent so much time throwing insults online, the lawsuit drew immediate attention for what it suggested about his own limits. The defense leaned hard on that point. Attorney Lisa Bloom argued that the tweet was a political insult protected by the Constitution and part of the exaggerated style common on Twitter. Twitter itself pushed back against Woods' effort to reveal the anonymous user's identity. The company argued that forcing exposure without a valid defamation claim would chill free speech, especially when the target was a public figure who already chose to enter public fights on the platform. Woods, in other words, wanted the protection of strong speech when he used it, and strong legal remedies when someone used it against him. For a moment, though, the case seemed to move in his favor. On 11 February 2016, Judge Mel Rakana denied an anti-slappy motion to dismiss, ruling that Woods had shown a chance of prevailing. A linguist had testified that readers would understand the tweet as a factual claim rather than pure opinion. That ruling gave Woods a path to keep pressing forward, and possibly force disclosure of the anonymous user's identity. Then the case took a turn no one expected. Abe List died before it could go much further. On 20th October 2016, Lisa Bloom revealed her client's death publicly after Woods had celebrated an appeal being dropped without realizing why it happened. Even then, Woods tried to keep pushing. He sought to continue the case and pursued the identity of the deceased user, which only deepened the impression that he treated speech as a principle when it suited him and as an injury when it touched him. That impression was hard to shake because his own Twitter feed was full of personal attacks. He had called political opponents parasites, liars, fools, and worse. He used ridicule often and with enthusiasm, so critics saw a clear contradiction in his outrage over being called a cocaine addict, while he freely hurled ugly labels at others. By then, the real pattern was plain. Woods did not just use Twitter to express opinions. He used it as a weapon, and the sharpness of that weapon started cutting into the career that once defined him. The break became impossible to ignore on 4 July 2018. That night, Woods posted a screenshot of an email from his agent, Ken Kaplan, of the Gersh Agency. The subject line read, "Well," and the message said, "It's the 4th of July, and I'm feeling patriotic. I don't want to represent you anymore. I mean, I could go on a rant, but you know what I'd say." Woods, then 71, and followed by around 1.5 million people on Twitter, shared it publicly and cast the split as political punishment. He described Kaplan as a liberal and used the moment to claim Hollywood was pushing out conservatives. Still, the story had been building before that email arrived. In February 2018, Woods said a member of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association had stopped nominating him for Golden Globes after he refused to say he would support a future Hillary Clinton run for president. He claimed he had gone from 9 nominations to none. He also said publicly that he had accepted being blacklisted for his politics and even announced his retirement. Yet, that explanation had competition. Industry observers noted that he had not held a major studio film role in years, was already in his 70s, and had a reputation for being difficult. Studios had practical reasons to keep their distance, and his public behavior gave them even more. One of the ugliest examples had come the previous summer. On 10th of July 2017, Woods tweeted a photo from an Orange County Pride parade showing parents holding signs in support of their gender-creative child. He responded with a grotesque line suggesting the child would grow up and murder the parents, writing that the boy might someday realize what had been done to him and stuff both of you dismembered into a freezer in the garage. The post shocked even people used to his provocations. Neil Patrick Harris replied the next day and called the tweet ignorant and classless. He said he knew the family personally and told Woods he should be ashamed. Woods answered by doubling down and calling the parents' choices tantamount to child abuse, which only strengthened the view that he had become toxic even to colleagues who were not normally part of online political warfare. Years later, he managed one more political shock. On 6th and 7th of March 2026, at age 78, Woods announced on X that he was done with the Republican Party. The timing stunned many of his own supporters because only days earlier he had praised Donald Trump as the greatest president of his lifetime. Then suddenly he declared he would re-register as an independent, blasted congressional Republicans for blocking an investigation into Ilhan Omar, and attacked them for opposing the SAVE Act. He called GOP lawmakers uniparty traitors and cut himself loose from the political home he had defended so aggressively for decades. By that point, the move felt less like a reinvention and more like the latest turn in a long public unraveling.